So you guys remember Lily Phillips, right? If you don't remember, she is an OnlyFans creator who is most famous for sleeping with 101 men in a singular day out in the UK, where she had some of her followers and fans line up to literally have sex with her for a matter of minutes. And she got through 101 men that day, subsequently cried, and she said she cried not because of the trauma she endured sleeping with 101 men, but because she felt like she couldn't give the best performance to each and every one of them. Yes, that's Lily Phillips. Then she faked a whole pregnancy announcement. She wasn't actually pregnant, of course, and all doing this while competing with a fellow OnlyFans creator, Bonnie Blue, who is alleged to have slept with 1,000 men in one day. Now, whether or not that is true, we do not know. I am not looking to confirm it. But now Lily Phillips has confirmed what we probably already knew somewhere deep down, that not only did she have extremely early porn exposure, talking about 11 years old, but she finds it completely normal, saying that it made her sex confident. So now we're gonna watch the clip where Lily Phillips is discussing exactly that, and we're gonna see what we find. Again, this is BBC Newsnight.
I probably watched pornography first when I was maybe 11. And so I've always known about it. I've always knew it was a thing. And I always thought it was very normal to watch.
Right. But if you started watching it at 11,
yeah.
I mean, that is so young.
Yeah.
A very plastered smile on the face. She thinks that's a pretty normal situation. And I will tell you guys, even for today's time, 11 years old is not particularly normal, especially for females. And we'll get into stats on that in just a little bit. But the normal way in which she is referring to pornography should tell you everything you need to know about her trajectory and how she got on the path of sleeping with 101 men in a single day. And it will also tell you why she ended up crying afterwards, because sometimes the things that we perceive to be normal are not exactly that. And they actually are a sign of trauma and abuse. Sound like very big words, but clearly they've led her down a traumatic path. And watching pornography at 11 and then perceiving that to be normal is a totally different beast.
And you say it's normal. Can you describe how it has influenced you and your brain and your outlook on sex?
You know what? It actually made me really sex confident and learn a lot of things. I mean, that's mostly how I learned through pornography. And I do think it has a positive effect on me, just in terms of like understanding things a little bit more.
You would have to think that it has a positive effect on you in order to have gone down this path, and of course the path towards creating pornography for other individuals. And I will make maybe a pretty bold statement. I don't think there's a such thing as becoming sex confident from watching pornography. And the reason I will make that statement is because pornography is not a depiction of actual sex. Pornography lies on the extreme of an act and actually funnels you down a path to watching more and extreme versions of sex. I will put in quotes, because at some point it's like, what can we call it that? So to say from her perspective that it made her more sex confident, maybe she means it felt like she had more knowledge going into sexual acts, and because she was exposed at a younger age, she felt more knowledgeable on these acts based off of her watching of pornography. But when your lens of sexuality is that of the lens of pornography, you don't really have a lot of knowledge. Now, you may feel more confident as being exposed at 11 makes you far earlier exposed than probably a lot of the other kids that she was around and a lot of the other girls she was around, as the age of exposure tends to differ from female to male. And she might perceive that to be a confidence, and it's a confidence that she carries with her in her OnlyFans creation because she knows what porn looks like and therefore knows how to create it. But I will tell you, I don't think it's real sex confidence.
Right. But as we know, what we see in pornography online can be extreme. Is not normal.
It depends what type of pornography you're watching. That's what I would say.
Okay. And when you look,
and she knew exactly what to watch when she was 11 years old, right, guys?
Back and reflect on the fact that you had access to this pornography and were looking at it from the age of 11, and not just you, any Gen Z who's got a smartphone.
Yeah.
Does that suggest to you that maybe your generation has been let down by politicians or the tech companies or even parents?
I think it's hard because sex is a part of life, and I don't think...
But not when you're 11.
Well, I think you should be learning from it from that age. I do believe that, because that's when you start to think about things like that.
But learning
maybe not
via
learning,
pornography?
yeah, maybe not learning from pornography, but I do think understanding it more from that age would be helpful.
Okay. So there's so many layers of like trying to justify something that deep down she knows is not, it's not right. It's not how we would want an ideal childhood to play out for a young kid. So she's trying so, viciously to defend things that took place that shouldn't have took place within her life, and of course that have led to the outcome that her life is now living in. And that has to be a justification of the exposure to porn, for we know that the exposure to porn is probably a significant part of the pathway that led to her sleeping with 101 men in a single day. Now, should there be a maybe birds and the bees talk with 11-year-olds? Yeah, I mean, I'm open to that conversation. I think that kids should be learning about their bodies and what their bodies can do and how their bodies can be victimized at many different ages. And 11 years old is one of those ages. Has nothing to do with pornography, though. Pornography would be the worst possible thing that you could expose an 11-year-old to in a time where you're trying to talk to them about their bodies, about reproduction, about sex, and about the possibility of predatory things happening from that perspective. So she's not quite making the case for 11-year-old exposure to porn, and she knows it because she's actively saying, I wouldn't expose an 11-year-old to porn as a means of educating them or giving them knowledge about sexuality. So why defend your early exposure to pornography? And as I said, we were going to go through a little bit of like the stats on the age that this typically happens. There are studies out of Australia that say typically for females, the exposure to pornography, at least there, was around 17 years old. And for males, it was 13 years old. So typically it's boys getting into pornography than girls. We also have this article from Psychology Today that says exposure to pornography during adolescence is becoming the norm rather than the exception. For example, among a sample of American high school students, 56% viewed pornography in the previous year. In another study of U.S. youth in late adolescence, 80.3% reported accessing pornography. And it says here more than 70% of the adolescents in our sample had already consumed sexually explicit internet material at baseline, which suggests that it is now a normative part of adolescent development. But even in high school and the numbers where some of these studies are taking place, we're talking 13 to 17. And Lily Phillips is slamming those stats out of the way by saying, I was introduced at 11 years old. Now we're going to close out the clip with Lily.
Is there a direct link between you watching pornography as you grew up and the decisions you've made to do what you do now?
I think maybe. I mean, I don't know a life without pornography, so maybe.
Okay, I don't know a life without pornography, so maybe. Yeah, maybe the desensitization to not only sex acts, but extreme sex acts happening within your formative years as an 11-year-old, where the concept of sex is foreign, because not only are you not supposed to be exposed to that, but within our biology, in prepubescence, there's not really anything firing in our brain and in our bodies telling us to go down that path, especially as young women. So being exposed and I guess on a fast track to sexual exposure by watching porn at 11 years old is not exactly the best. And I would imagine, if I had to wager, it contributes quite a bit to how she turned out. And this is the thing, when we talk about Lily Phillips or the Bonnie Blues or any sort of OnlyFans creators, and as more women put themselves in that place as a career path, we often look at them and go, how could you do this? This is so awful. Look at the pain you're inflicting not only on yourself, but on society. There's a lot of different fingers to point in these situations. Some at the women who are creating this content, a lot at the men who are purchasing the content. But I don't know how we point fingers at like the sick society that we've created where this content is now the norm. And not only is it the norm for adults, but it's the norm for children who are being exposed to it at earlier and earlier ages. That 11-year-old story for Lily Phillips is going to become the norm, as statistically it isn't yet, but it's going to become younger and younger and younger as we become more integrated with social media and with the internet, and where I, as a kid, did not grow up with a phone or a tablet in hand. We have babies, newborn babies, being pushed out the womb and handed an iPhone and a tablet. So I can only imagine that this gets worse, that the desensitization to sexual acts and extreme sexual acts that would in no way be viewed as normal at any other point in human history becomes something that we are exposed to on any given day on our phones. Scary, very, very scary. I was looking up the stats earlier and talking about how many women within this age demographic are becoming OnlyFans creators, and it's something like 5-7% or something like that in the US. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I can't imagine that number or that research that we've seen on exposure to porn, can't imagine that that's not influencing this. So every time I hear more about Lily Phillips, I learn more about why she's in the situation that she's in. And let's not get it confused. It is not a good one. No matter how sex confident or empowered she says she is, I'm just going to go ahead and go out on a strong limb and say that she's not. But guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know how you feel about this clip. If you disagree with anything I said in this video, do get out, but do so respectfully. We encourage healthy debate on this channel. And if you like this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time I post a video for you guys, which is every day. And I will see you guys tomorrow.